The city of Arinder lay in ruins, its once great towers now jagged shadows against a sky streaked with green lightning. The streets were silent except for the hum of broken drones and the occasional crack of shifting metal. Tavin Carell moved through the alleyways like a shadow himself, careful, alert, every step measured. The city had long forgotten people like him, humans who survived on wit and courage rather than power or wealth. Most called him a vagrant, but Tavin knew how to stay alive where machines and mercenaries prowled. He paused under a flickering hollow sign and scanned the empty street ahead. Mercenary patrols had grown bolder over the last weeks, hunting anyone with unusual DNA, anyone who might be important. Tavin had heard the whispers, but he didn't know why he was targeted. All he knew was that he had to survive, and surviving meant thinking faster than anyone around him. He ducked into a collapsed doorway as a drone swept overhead. Its sensors glowed red, scanning for movement, but Tavin had already melted into the shadows. The air smelled of metal and rain, and Tavin's stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten in a day. Yet hunger was secondary. Danger was everywhere, and every decision carried weight. He spotted a loose panel on a nearby wall and pried it open, revealing an old power conduit. Sparks flew as he rerouted energy to create a small diversion. The drone paused, confused, and veered off. A flicker of a grin touched Tavin's face. Small victories mattered. In a city that had forgotten humanity, cleverness could save a life. As he moved on, memories haunted him. He remembered the stories his mother told him as a child, tales of kings, thrones, and a family lost to time. He had never known them, but sometimes in the quiet moments he felt a strange pull, like he belonged somewhere he could not name. That pull had led him here, to Arinder, where every ruined street whispered secrets of power and history. Maybe it was nothing more than a memory, or maybe it was something real waiting to be discovered. A sudden noise made him freeze. Footsteps, metal clanking against rubble. Tavin pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. Two figures appeared, cloaked in black armor, their helmets glowing faintly. Mercenaries. They didn't notice him at first, but he knew it was only a matter of seconds. His mind raced. The alley was narrow, no room to escape. Then he saw it, a pile of rubble just large enough to create a small barrier. Using all his strength, he toppled it over, sending dust and debris into the air. The mercenaries swore and waved their scanners, but Tavin had vanished. He ran, heart pounding, through winding streets, leaping over broken machinery and fallen signs. Every step was perilous. A misstep could snap a bone or draw attention. Yet there was something exhilarating about surviving when everything seemed stacked against him. Humans had built the city, but humans had also fallen from it. Now it was up to the clever, the brave, the determined to make it through. Tavin felt that truth in every nerve of his body. Eventually he reached the remains of the old palace, its spires jagged but still standing like silent sentinels over the city. He paused, panting, and pressed his hand against the cold stone walls. Something deep inside him stirred, a recognition he could not explain. The palace had been abandoned for 1,000 years, yet it seemed alive in its silence. Tavin didn't know why, but he felt drawn to it, as if it held answers he had long been seeking. A low hum broke the silence. He crouched and listened. It wasn't wind or storm, it was a machine hidden behind the palace walls. The hum grew louder, a pulse beneath the stone. Tavin's eyes widened. This city was not as empty as it seemed. Something, or someone, was waiting, watching. His heart thudded, but he didn't step back. Humans survived not by running from fear, but by facing it. Tavin glanced at the darkened windows of the palace, knowing he had to get closer. Whatever secrets lay inside could change everything, maybe even explain the strange pull he felt all his life. He took a careful step forward, then another, moving with patience and precision. Somewhere in the silence, sensors might be scanning, mercenaries might be waiting, but Tavin's mind was sharp, his instincts faster. He had survived worse than this, and he would survive this too. Then a spark of light flared from one of the upper windows. It wasn't a reflection, it was deliberate. A signal. Tavin's breath caught. Whoever, or whatever, was up there. They had noticed him. The city had grown quiet again, but now the tension was unbearable. Every step forward carried risk. Every decision could be his last. Yet, for the first time in years, Tavin felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. The pull he had felt since childhood was real, and it was calling him into the heart of the city, into the palace, into a destiny that seemed impossible for someone like him. He clenched his fists and adjusted the straps of his scavenger pack. The mercenaries, the dangers, the ruined city, they could not stop him. Humans survived through courage, through intelligence, through daring that machines and mercenaries could never match. Tavin Carell took a deep breath and stepped forward, disappearing into the shadowed streets leading to the palace, unaware of the scanner waiting to discover what no one had seen for 1,000 years. Tavin crouched behind the shattered walls of the palace courtyard, chest heaving, sweat stinging his eyes. The spark he had seen in the upper window was gone, but the hum persisted, a steady vibration that seemed almost alive. He had no idea what waited inside, only that it was important, dangerous, and possibly the key to understanding why the mercenaries were hunting him. He slipped through a side entrance, careful to avoid broken tiles that could echo under his weight. Dust and decay filled the air, and every step he took stirred memories of a place he had never visited. The palace had been abandoned for centuries, but its pulse was unmistakable. Somewhere inside, technology slept, waiting for the right hand, the right bloodline to awaken it. Tavin didn't know why, but a shiver ran down his spine. Humans were supposed to be fragile, disposable in a world built by machines. Yet here he was, navigating death and danger with nothing but his courage and quick mind. He reached what looked like an old archive. Hollow panels hung from the walls, cracked and flickering. As he stepped closer, a soft click echoed through the chamber. Then a pale blue light ignited from one of the panels, illuminating a tall, thin machine, a scanner, ancient but fully operational. Its interface blinked and hummed, and a voice, monotone and mechanical, cut through the silence. Subject detected. Lineage confirmed, royal DNA present. Immediate extraction required. Tavin froze. His eyes widened and his heart skipped. He had never understood why he felt different, why the city seemed to pull him in ways no one else noticed. Royal DNA. The words repeated in his mind. They were impossible. He was just a scavenger, a homeless human, a survivor. And yet, this machine claimed he was something more. A mix of fear and determination surged through him. If this was true, the mercenaries weren't just hunting for bounty, they were hunting for the lost heir of Irinder, the last bloodline that could claim the throne. One thought crashed through him. If he did nothing, the city, the kingdom, everything could fall further into chaos. Humans had survived this long because they acted when others wouldn't. Now it was his turn. Before he could react further, the floor vibrated under him, a distant, low rumble that made dust fall from the ceiling. The mercenaries were close, moving with deadly precision. They had sensors, drones, and weapons, but they didn't have his agility, his instinct. Tavin ran a hand along the scanner's casing, searching for a way to use it without being detected. His fingers traced a small, hidden panel, ancient circuitry exposed. He took a deep breath, recalling every trick he had used to survive: misdirection, improvisation, speed, and observation. He connected his scavenged tools to the scanner and sent a false genetic signature outward. Red lights flashed, scanners recalibrated, and the mercenaries paused as the signal misled them. Tavin ducked into the shadows, barely breathing, heart racing. The palace corridors were a labyrinth, but Tavin moved like a shadow. Every corner held danger. He avoided tripwires, bypassed collapsing floors, and dodged security turrets that still remembered centuries-old protocols. He wasn't just surviving, he was outthinking machines built to trap him. Humans could be underestimated, but intelligence and courage were weapons no drone could match. Suddenly, a voice came from the scanner, quieter now but unmistakable. Subject approaching heart chamber. Destination, Crown of Irinder. Tavin's pulse quickened. The crown? He had heard stories as a child, but they had seemed like fairy tales. Now it was real, waiting for him just ahead. But reaching it would not be simple. The mercenaries were regrouping, and if they discovered him now, there would be no escape. Every step forward carried the weight of the city's survival. Humans had always fought impossible odds, but this was more than survival, it was destiny. A distant crash echoed behind him, a drone smashing into a broken archway. Tavin froze, listening. They were closing in faster than he expected. His mind raced. There had to be a path that would let him reach the crown without being trapped. He scanned the walls, the floors, the ceiling, every surface. Then he spotted it, a series of ventilation shafts barely wide enough to crawl through, running directly toward the heart chamber. It would be tight, claustrophobic, dangerous, but it was his only option. He removed his pack and crawled into the first shaft, feeling the metal edges bite at his arms. Dust choked him, sparks flew, and the hum of machinery vibrated through his bones. Below, the mercenaries searched in confusion, following the false signals Tavin had sent. His plan was risky, but humans survived because they dared when machines hesitated. He pushed forward, inch by inch, relying on instinct and courage more than strength. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed and Tavin emerged into a small dimly lit chamber. The air hummed with energy. At the center, suspended above a glowing platform, was the crown. Its light pulsed like a heartbeat. For a moment, Tavin felt awe. 1,000 years of history, of human ingenuity, of lost leadership, rested in this one object. He had come this far, outsmarted killers, dodged death, and faced the impossible. Now, the hardest part awaited, claiming what was his and surviving long enough to show the city that a human could still rise above all odds. The hum grew louder, almost threatening, and shadows shifted in the corners. He wasn't alone. Something, or someone, was waiting. Tavin squared his shoulders, wiped sweat from his brow, and stepped forward. Whatever lay ahead, he knew humans had always survived because they refused to back down, even when the world turned against them. And now, his courage would be tested like never before. Tavin crouched just outside the heart chamber, staring at the glowing crown suspended above the platform. The light pulsed like a living thing, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. Every instinct screamed caution. This was no ordinary object. It was centuries old, built to recognize the one who could claim the kingdom. And the scanner had already identified him. The moment he touched it, the world would know the last royal heir had returned. He paused, considering the danger. Mercenaries were closing in, their footsteps echoing through the palace corridors. Drones hummed, scanning for heat and movement. Any mistake and he would be trapped or worse. Tavin felt a surge of determination. Humans survived by thinking faster, adapting and acting boldly when others hesitated. He had survived worse than this and he would survive now. The chamber itself was full of traps. Pressure plates lined the floor, laser grids crisscrossed the air, and mechanical arms lurked in the shadows, ready to strike at anything that wasn't recognized. Tavin crouched low, analyzing the patterns. Machines were precise, predictable. Humans were clever. That difference could save his life. He studied the angles of the lasers, the timing of the swinging arms, and the placement of the pressure plates. Every motion had a rhythm and Tavin had to match it perfectly. He took a deep breath, steadying his racing heart. Then, slowly he moved forward, sliding between the first set of lasers. Sparks hissed as his sleeve brushed one beam, but he didn't flinch. Step by careful step, he navigated the deadly path. The mechanical arms swiveled, sensing his presence, but he ducked under, rolled past, and pressed forward. He felt fear, of course, but fear was fuel for those who refused to be broken. Humans had survived on courage for millennia. Halfway across the chamber, a panel in the wall hissed and opened. A voice, calm, mechanical, and unyielding, spoke. Unauthorized access detected. Security protocols activating. Red lights flashed across the room. The pressure plates shifted, the laser patterns changed. Tavin froze, calculating his options. There was no turning back now. Humans survived because they acted decisively when hesitation could mean death. He adjusted his path in an instant, sliding sideways and rolling over a pressure plate just as it activated. Sparks flew, and a mechanical arm snapped down inches from his shoulder. A thought struck him: what if the crown itself could be used? Machines recognized patterns, energy, DNA. If he could mimic a royal command even briefly, it might buy him time. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small device scavenged from a broken drone. It emitted a weak energy pulse, just enough to interfere with sensors. He timed it perfectly as he approached the crown, and the energy rippled through the room. Lasers flickered, arms froze, and the pressure plates reset. For a moment, the chamber was still. Tavin didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, heart pounding, and reached for the crown. The moment his fingers brushed the glowing metal, a surge of energy shot through him. The scanner in the palace awoke fully, projecting a pulse that lit up the entire city. Somewhere far above, hidden in the ruins, the mercenaries froze, alerted to his presence. But something else happened, something Tavin hadn't expected. The chamber walls shifted, revealing hidden panels and corridors. The palace itself seemed alive, responding to his presence. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. Only the worthy may claim the crown. Prove your will, human. Tavin's pulse quickened. He understood, this wasn't just a crown. It was a test designed to challenge courage, intelligence, and determination. Humans survived impossible odds because they never stopped when challenges seemed insurmountable. This was one more test and he would not fail. From the shadows, movement stirred. Mercenaries had entered the building, weapons raised. Drones hovered near the ceiling, scanning. Tavin felt the weight of history on his shoulders. If he fell here, the royal line would remain lost, and the city would descend further into chaos. Humans survived because they acted when the world expected them to fail. He would act now. He pressed a button on his device, sending another pulse through the room, temporarily disrupting sensors. Then, with a burst of speed, he darted across the chamber, leaping over pressure plates and sliding under laser grids. A mechanical arm swung toward him and he twisted mid-air, barely avoiding it. His fingers closed on the crown, and the energy pulse spread, knocking back the drones and confusing the mercenaries. The chamber was quiet again except for the hum of the crown. Tavin's chest heaved. He had done it. He had survived, outsmarted machines, and claimed the object that no human had touched in 1,000 years. But he knew the danger wasn't over. Mercenaries would regroup, and the city outside would soon erupt in chaos. Tavin held the crown, feeling its weight and energy. He had proven his intelligence, courage, and determination. Humans survived because they refused to be defeated, even when odds were impossible. Now he had the chance to show the city, to prove that one human could change the course of history. As he looked toward the corridors leading out, a shadow flickered near the entrance. He wasn't alone. More enemies were coming, and the palace seemed ready to challenge him further. Tavin gritted his teeth, adjusting his grip on the crown. Humans survived because they acted boldly, and he would act now. Whatever waited beyond this room, whatever tests or dangers came next, Tavin knew he had one advantage: human courage, intelligence, and will could overcome machines, mercenaries, and the impossible. He stepped toward the next corridor, ready to face it all, knowing the turning point of his destiny had only just begun. Tavin's pulse pounded as he emerged from the heart chamber, crown in hand. The palace corridors stretched before him like a maze, shadows twisting under the flickering light. Somewhere ahead, the mercenaries regrouped, weapons ready, their scanners hunting for him. Drones hummed overhead, their sensors cutting through the gloom. Every step he took was a gamble. One mistake could end everything. He moved quickly but carefully, scanning every corner. Broken tiles, jagged metal, and collapsed walls created both obstacles and opportunities. Humans survived because they could see possibilities machines could not. Tavin's mind raced. He needed to outsmart them, turn their strength into weakness. He could not fight them directly, too many, too well armed. But the palace itself was old, its systems partly dormant and partly active. That was his chance. He ducked into a side chamber filled with abandoned control panels. Dust and cobwebs clung to the surfaces, but the wiring was intact. With trembling hands, Tavin reconnected power circuits, rerouted energy, and manipulated the palace's old defense systems. A low hum rose as turrets blinked to life, targeting the drones hovering above. Lasers swept the hallways, knocking machines off course. The mercenaries shouted in confusion, guns firing blindly into the corridors. Sparks flew as their drones crashed into walls. Tavin didn't pause to celebrate. Humans survived because they acted when danger pressed close, and this was far from over. He pressed forward, ducking under a swinging arm, rolling past collapsing tiles, and using his quick reflexes to avoid detection. Every movement was precise, every decision calculated. At a junction, two mercenaries appeared, blocking the hall. Tavin froze, calculating. There was no way around them without exposing himself to more danger. He reached into his pack and pulled a reflective panel, tossing it to the side. The mercenary scanners picked it up, redirecting their attention. While they investigated, Tavin lunged forward, vaulting over debris and sliding past them in a blur. Humans survived because they used wit, not brute strength, to overcome the impossible. A sudden alarm sounded, echoing through the palace. The AI voice from the crown chamber spoke again. Unauthorized combatants detected. Extraction in progress. Red lights flashed, warning turrets activated, and heavy shutters began closing. The palace was reacting as if it were alive, defending the crown, and now Tavin, the human, against intruders. He felt a thrill surge through him. Humans had always survived by facing challenges no machine could fully anticipate. Courage, intelligence, and determination had brought him here, and they would carry him forward. He darted down a corridor, the crown glowing in his hands, illuminating the path. Mercenaries fired blindly, drones swooped from above, and collapsing debris forced him to leap and slide in perfect timing. Sparks flew around him, metal clanged, and for a moment, the corridor seemed like a storm of chaos. Yet Tavin pressed on. He had survived worse, and now he had a crown that carried the weight of 1,000 years. Humans survived by believing, by daring, by refusing to yield. Reaching the central atrium, Tavin faced the full force of the mercenaries. Dozens of armed figures blocked every exit. Above, drones circled like predators. He took a deep breath. Fear surged, but he could not falter. Humans had survived because they acted when hope seemed lost, when the odds were stacked impossibly against them. He activated the crown's energy, and a pulse radiated through the atrium. The drones faltered, their sensors overloaded, while the mercenaries were thrown back by a wave of force. The palace itself seemed to join the fight. Ancient defense systems awakened fully. Energy beams swept corridors, turrets rotated with uncanny precision, and gates slammed down, isolating intruders. Tavin moved through it all, each step deliberate, his mind faster than any machine. One by one, the mercenaries fell into traps he had engineered on the fly, collapsing floors, redirected turrets, false signals. Every obstacle became an advantage, every danger a tool. Humans survived because they could turn adversity into opportunity. Finally, only a handful of mercenaries remained, cornered and desperate. Tavin held the crown high, its energy flaring like a heartbeat. The last drone exploded in a shower of sparks. The remaining soldiers hesitated, realizing they were outmatched not by brute force, but by the intelligence, courage and resourcefulness of one human. Tavin stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Leave this place. The crown is mine, and the kingdom will rise again." For a moment, silence filled the atrium. Then the mercenaries fled, their weapons abandoned, their confidence shattered. Tavin's chest heaved as he lowered the crown, the hum of energy settling into a steady pulse. He had survived impossible odds. He had outsmarted machines, evaded elite killers, and claimed the object that had waited a millennium. The city outside began to stir. Citizens peered from broken windows and alleyways, watching the glow from the palace. In the chaos they saw one man, ragged, weary and human, stand victorious where machines and mercenaries had failed. Humans survived because they refused to be broken. Humans survived because they dared. Tavin had proven it. He looked at the crown in his hands and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This was more than survival. This was proof that courage, intelligence, and determination could reshape history. The palace, once silent for 1,000 years, now acknowledged him as the rightful heir. But Tavin knew this victory was only the beginning. The kingdom outside awaited him, broken and leaderless. He had the crown, yes, but the real challenge would be earning the trust of the people, rebuilding what had been lost and proving that a human, one human, could rise against impossible odds. The hum of the crown echoed in the atrium, a heartbeat for the future. Tavin Carell, the homeless scavenger who had outwitted death itself, knew that the true fight was just beginning. And he was ready. Tavin stepped out of the palace into the first rays of dawn. Irinder had changed overnight. The city's ruins, once silent and lifeless, now buzzed with a cautious energy. Citizens peered from alleys and broken windows, watching the glow of the crown settle into Tavin's hands. For a moment, fear and awe collided in their eyes. They had lived under shadow and chaos for 1,000 years, waiting for something they hardly dared to hope for. And now one human, ragged, weary and alive, stood before them. He felt the weight of the crown pressing against his chest, not as a burden but as a promise. Humans survived not because they were strongest, but because they endured, adapted, and dared when the world had given up on them. Tavin had faced drones, mercenaries, ancient machines, and traps designed to kill. He had survived all of it, relying only on courage, intelligence, and determination. And now, he held in his hands the symbol of hope the city had forgotten. As he walked through the streets, people began to emerge. At first, they kept their distance, whispering to one another, unsure if they could trust what they saw. But Tavin moved among them calmly, every gesture showing restraint and confidence. He didn't demand loyalty or obedience. He offered protection, leadership, and the proof that humans could rise above impossible odds. He stopped at a collapsed marketplace where children played among rubble. A girl with dirt-streaked cheeks stared at him, wide-eyed. Tavin knelt, keeping his voice quiet. "Humans survive because we help each other," he said. "You have to believe we can rebuild." Her eyes lit up and she ran to join her friends. A small act, but it carried weight. Humans survived not by dominating but by inspiring. Tavin felt a surge of hope he hadn't known he could feel. The city could live again, not through machines, not through fear, but through people willing to act when others hesitated. As the morning progressed, news of Tavin's survival and the crown spread through the city. Mercenaries who had fled earlier were captured or disbanded as citizens reclaimed the streets. The AI scanners, still operational in parts of the city, confirmed Tavin's lineage. The message was clear. A human had returned to lead and the kingdom would rise again. Citizens who had feared the end of their world now whispered of a new beginning. Tavin made his way back to the palace, where the crown's energy hummed in his hands. He didn't wear it yet. He wanted the people to see him as more than a symbol, as a human among humans. He walked the corridors he had once navigated in fear and emerged onto the grand balcony. The city stretched below him, battered but alive. He raised his hand and the crown glowed in acknowledgement. "Irinder has survived because humans never give up," he said, his voice carrying over the streets. "We endure. We adapt. We fight. And we will rebuild together." For a moment silence fell. Then cheers erupted. Humans, watching one of their own rise against impossible odds, felt something awaken inside them. A spark of courage, hope, and determination. The city, long forgotten, had found a leader who embodied what they had always been capable of. Tavin Carell had proven that even in the face of machines, mercenaries, and centuries of decay, humans could prevail. He spent the next weeks organizing the city. He rallied survivors, repaired systems, and repurposed old defenses. Every step of rebuilding reminded him, and the people, that humans were defined not by comfort or wealth, but by ingenuity, bravery, and the refusal to surrender. The palace became a hub of activity once more, not just a symbol of lost royalty, but a testament to human resilience. At night, Tavin would walk the streets he had once scavenged, now lined with lights powered by rerouted energy conduits he had repaired. Citizens greeted him with smiles and nods. Children played safely and merchants began returning to the markets. He thought of the challenges that had brought him here, of drones, traps, and mercenaries, and he smiled quietly. Humans had survived those dangers because they dared when no one else could. They had prevailed because courage, intelligence, and heart mattered more than machines or weapons. One evening, as he stood on the palace balcony, watching the sun set over the city, Tavin felt something he had never felt before: belonging. He had been homeless, a scavenger, an outcast. Now he was the protector of a kingdom, a symbol of what humans could achieve when they refused to bow to fear. The crown's energy pulsed gently in his hands, almost like it recognized him not just as a royal heir, but as a human who had earned it through courage. And in that moment, Tavin realized something more profound. Humans were more than their history, more than their failures. Humans survived, endured, and inspired because they acted when others hesitated. A single human, standing against impossible odds, could change the fate of an entire city, an entire kingdom, and even a legacy forgotten for 1,000 years. Tavin smiled, letting the crown glow softly. The city of Irinder was alive again, and it would never forget the human who had survived, triumphed, and shown them all that courage and determination could rewrite history. The kingdom had been lost, but humanity had prevailed. And for the first time in his life, Tavin Carell felt truly at home. The city slept that night under quiet skies, and yet the pulse of hope beat strong. Humans would endure. Humans would rise. And humans would never be forgotten.